Recently, Brooklyn Nash posted on LinkedIn that self-employment is not inherently riskier than a traditional 9 to 5. This post sparked a lot of debate in the comment section. Now, you have seen both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
So what's the verdict? Which do you prefer and why?
Yeah, that's a great question, and leave it to Brooklyn Nash to start some spicy conversation on LinkedIn.
You are now listening to Marketing Over Wine, a podcast where I chat with the marketers behind the companies and the campaigns you see in the world today. They share everything: how they got into marketing, the strategies and the tools that they use, how they charge for their services, and the mistakes and successes they have made in their career. Each episode is unfiltered and a masterclass, so come join us. I am your host as always, Olaniyi. All right,
ready for takeoff.
Let's get started. My guest today is Rebecca Rosenberg. She is a conversational copywriter for finance and B2B SaaS companies and a brand strategist. Rebecca has over a decade of experience in marketing, from in-house and agency life to entrepreneurship. She has worked with notable brands like Investopedia, The Balance, Alert Media, DATAMARK, and CamelBak. Thanks for being here, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Guten Morgen.
Guten Morgen. Good night.
Wie geht es dir?
Mir geht's sehr gut. Und dir, wie geht's dir?
Mir geht es gut, danke. I'm messing this up.
I'm
messing this up. So
I wasn't expecting German conversation yet. Great job.
I had this idea when I was doing my check to come up with the different questions to talk about, the different things to talk about in the pod. I realized that you speak German.
I do.
You speak Spanish.
I do.
You speak a little bit of Turkish and Korean. So I figured that if I learn a bit of German conversation starter, it will probably help. And I learned this. I kept pronouncing it over and over. Mir geht es gut, danke. Wow.
You did great. I love it.
Thank you.
It's not a simple language.
Apparently, the pronunciations are much different.
Yeah.
So, you worked full-time in marketing for 7 years. First as a teaching assistant, then as a social media manager, and finally as head of digital before moving into freelancing. Mm-hmm. So why did you make this switch exactly? Let's talk about that first. Why did you make the switch from full-time to freelance?
Yeah, sure. That's a great place to start. Yeah, so before I started my career in marketing, I had worked as an ESL teacher, so English as a second language.
Okay.
So always loved traveling and was always interested in like how people communicate in other cultures.
Okay.
But at the time when I started my job as a head of digital for a taco chain, a national restaurant chain, I had been back in Texas where I grew up. I had been back for like about 10 years.
Okay.
So I think I was working in this job, managing social media and managing the website and email marketing for a successful brand. Everything was going great.
Okay.
But I started seeing this conversation bubbling up online, like on Instagram and on Twitter, etc., about like the digital nomad lifestyle and, work from anywhere.
Yeah.
And this was before COVID, before it really blew up.
Mm-hmm.
But, having been a traveler and been an expat before, I was like, this sounds nice.
Yep.
It might be time for me to get back out there. And I realized kind of based on what I was doing, I don't have to be sitting at my desk tweeting or managing social media or running the website. I could actually be doing that from anywhere. But the company I was working with wasn't really ready for that yet. As I said, it was, pre-COVID. And so they were not open to me working remotely.
Yeah. Companies had not exactly known that they could work remotely before COVID.
Yeah. And to their credit, I think things have changed, since then. And that's fine. Their prerogative. So I decided to kind of secretly start planning and saving and asking myself, okay, when does it make sense to leave? When is my lease up with my apartment that I could leave? And how much money can I save in the meantime? And do I need to save? And then kind of planning, how will I make a living? How will I make money? And since I was already doing something kind of similar to freelance writing, so I was managing content and social media, I just kind of started teaching myself everything I could about how to start a business and how to do it on your own, kind of take your show on the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened.
Okay, that's a beautiful journey. I know that many of us, if given the chance, would also prefer the digital nomad lifestyle, because imagine that you wake up to sunrise in, let's say, Sweden or Switzerland. You wake up to sunrise in Switzerland, and you go visit the waterfall that morning, but you're back for the 9 o'clock meeting, and you can probably do some sightseeing and come back again to write your article later in the afternoon. Sounds like a very beautiful lifestyle, which is why most people are switching down to freelancing these days.
Yeah.
So recently, Brooklyn Nash posted on LinkedIn that self-employment is not inherently riskier than a traditional 9 to 5. And he goes on to say, and I'm tired of people treating it like it is. This post sparked a lot of debate in the comment section. Different people had different views. Someone made the point to support that freelancing is much better, and a point was that if she had 4 clients and one of them unexpectedly dropped, her income would go from 100% to 75%.
Yeah.
But if she was full-time and she receives the notice or she gets laid off, her income would go from 100% to 0, rather than the 100% to 75%. On the other hand, another person supporting 9 to 5, it was like a whole debate in the comment section. Another person supporting 9 to 5 mentioned stability over pitching constantly.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of get that person. He also mentioned healthcare insurance for a chronic illness, because freelancing doesn't give you healthcare insurance.
Yes.
And it goes on, it mentions other points. Some of them are retirement pension, severance package when you're actually laid off, rather than the abrupt end for freelancers. Now, you have seen both sides of the coin. You have been 7 years in-house and also 7 years freelance. So it's more of a midpoint for both. So what's the verdict? Which do you prefer and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, leave it to Brooklyn Nash to start some spicy conversation on LinkedIn. He's great at that. Yeah, and I mean, I have to say it depends. Like, for sure, especially in the last few years, we've seen tech layoffs.
Yeah.
We've seen lots of layoffs. And that person who said, you go from 100 to 0, that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people that are now working full-time jobs who have learned that maybe they want to do a side hustle or have, some freelance at the same time because of that. Freelance can definitely be very flexible, and I think there's a way to do that correctly too. For example, they say in freelance you should never have too much of your income be dependent on one client.
Yeah.
For example, you could have 4 clients, but maybe 60% of your income is with one client and the other 40% is split between those 3. That could be a little bit more dangerous if you suddenly lose that one client. So you kind of have to, learn to find a balance.
Yeah.
Still not put all your eggs in one basket. In freelance, there is a lot of flexibility. You could, a lot of people go on to create courses or have coaching programs or have consulting offers that allow them to, help multiple people at once, or create a digital product that you can create once and then sell multiple times. So that offers more flexibility. Yeah. So, there's no really right answer. I think it depends on you and where you are in your life. For me, freelance has been really important because I do choose to live abroad. My husband is German, and although he would be happy to live in the US, I prefer living abroad. And so this has offered me the flexibility of, I live in Turkey. I don't speak Turkish enough to be able to work. So with this, I work with clients all over the world, wherever I choose, and it works out great.
Okay. So you prefer freelancing?
I think for me, I prefer freelancing, absolutely.
Okay.
I had a friend who was a colleague and friend who was working in a full-time job, and she, lost that. She just decided on her own will to leave, but she was really happy to have freelancing network as kind of a go-between, during that time while she was looking for the next job. So can definitely help you.
Okay. At the beginning, I introduced you as a conversational copywriter. So what's that about? What does it mean to be a conversational copywriter?
Sure. Well, a conversational copywriter for me just means I put a little bit of personality into it. I put it on, my website because I work in the B2B niche and with tech and with products that can tend to be a little bit difficult to explain, a little bit complex.
Yeah.
And I think that I noticed that there's just kind of a lot of content in B2B that tends to be a little bit boring and flat.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have a way to infuse more personality and more usefulness into it, because at the end of the day, although, B2B buying processes can be long and tedious and somewhat formulaic, it's still people who are buying the product and people who have jobs to be done and problems to be solved.
That's true. Most B2B content that I read are boring.
Yes.
I don't know. I feel like people have the idea that B2B has to be professional and professional means it has to be in a certain format, and those formats are boring. So yeah, I completely understand that.
Yeah.
Now, I love that you brought that up, and I also read about the framework that you created, the human framework for unboring B2B content.
Yes.
The beauty of frameworks is that they act as a roadmap, guiding you through your writing process from start to finish. The human framework, according to your website, is broken down into holistic for H, useful, memorable, authentic, and neat. Is that correct?
Absolutely. You nailed it. Yep.
Okay. So how can B2B content be made to meet this criteria?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I created the framework as a way to kind of explain my approach, to help me map it out, and a way to talk about it to clients, to just explain how I approach B2B content in a kind of a more fun way. Because as you said, yeah, a lot of people think it has to be professional, and that's true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to have boring and have a bunch of jargon.
Yeah.
So holistic means that even before I start writing a word, I, gain full view of getting to know the product, a picture of the brand, understanding the industry, what the audience is saying, what are the questions they're asking. So it involves just kind of getting like a big picture view.
Okay.
The part about being useful means that, as I said, there are still people at the end of the day. They have problems to solve. They have a job to be done. And I think that good content should prioritize solving their problems and being valuable over selling.
Yeah.
Google likes that too, by the way.
Yeah. The new updates.
Yes, exactly. Being memorable is kind of tied to, the unboring part, keeping it human. So to make it memorable, it takes sometimes telling a little story, providing an anecdote or an example. In B2B, that can also be statistics.
Okay.
Anything that kind of makes it, people remember what you wrote. It could be a pop culture reference. And then authentic, again, comes back to the voice. You need to infuse your voice into it. The brand needs to be themselves on any platform and any type of content. That's part, related to the messaging as well. And then neat is kind of more practical.
Yeah.
It's the idea that white space is your friend. You want to give people a little bit of a brain break as they're reading, especially if it's a complex topic.
Okay.
You want to lay it out in a way that's really easy to read. And then for websites, that means, it's skimmable, maybe bulleted lists, short paragraphs with space between them.
Okay.
So those are some of the ways that I use the human framework to make content more accessible for people.
Okay, that's beautiful. And I think every marketer, or rather every writer for sales brand, needs to incorporate this human framework into their writing process.
Absolutely. Human framework for everyone.
Away from that, on the strategy aspect of things, what's your process for creating a brand strategy?
So when I work with clients on a brand strategy project, I generally start with getting to know, again, that holistic thing, getting to know the brand.
Yeah.
So I have an intake questionnaire that has about 30 to 40 questions that
Okay.
I'll have some key members of the brand fill out. And then we have a kickoff call for about 90 minutes where we'll kind of go over that. And hopefully I'll dive a little bit deeper into the questions and get some juicier answers that you're maybe not putting on the form.
Yeah.
So it's really about finding out, their goals for the project, where they're struggling with the brand and with the message, to kind of find out where to go from there and set the direction.
Nothing beats a two-way conversation. I mean, the form compared to the call.
Yes, definitely.
You get more responses. You get the juicier response over the call rather than the form.
Yeah, sometimes I've had people, instead of, they're really busy, they can skip the form and I'll just do it with them on the call.
Okay.
Because we're basically going over the same things, but I'll just ask them and it's more of like a free form answer. And you'd be surprised, what kind of insights come out. And the same thing with the next section of the project. I do customer interviews. And so those are meant to be really open-ended and have a conversation with them to kind of ask them like, okay, what was going on in your world when you realized you needed this product, so that they can kind of tell you a story rather than a yes/no question. So I do interviews. I also do a survey with a larger sample sample size. So maybe their whole email list will get the survey, and then we'll choose maybe 3 to 5 customers, previous customers or current customers, who would be a really good candidate to kind of open up a little bit more and talk to us deeper about the product.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the next phase is like putting it all together, synthesizing it. After I've looked at additional reviews from the competitors and other customers, so that, sorry, I forgot to include that in the research step. That would be like listening to reviews on social media, or product sites like G2 or Capterra, Trust Radius, etc., to see what people are saying. And then we put it all together, and I'm just trying to answer 6 questions basically to create the content strategy based on what we've learned. And those 6 questions are basically who, what, where, when, why, and how are we doing the content. So who are we talking to? What are the key messages and stories that we want to tell? Where would be like what channels we're going to be speaking to people on? How often? Like what are the tactics we're going to use, whether that's SEO or repurposing, etc., and why? What are the goals? So the most important parts of that are who and why.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that process.
Of course.
A quick thing to add, if you haven't subscribed yet and you love the content of Marketing Over Wine, please do so and share with all your friends. Now let's get back to the episode. So, looking back on your decade-long marketing experience, what are some of the biggest changes you have seen in the industry?
Well, certainly in the last year, AI, I think, has shaken up the industry for sure. I think as far as changes and how it will change it in the long term, I think that really remains to be seen. But it's caused some questions, and that's always good. I think another thing that has changed is just the sheer number of people. There's so many more freelancers and so many more content writers and copywriters out there, partly because of the way the world has changed and people just seeing the opportunity. So you really have to stand out more, I believe, as a content writer and be more of a specialist than just a generalist. But on the other side of that, I think more brands are open to working with freelancers now than they were, say, 5 years ago.
Okay. Here I got everyone really quaking in their boots. It started causing people to become very frantic. There was the different conversation of, AI is going to take our jobs. AI is going to take every marketer's job. And then there is the, AI is not going to take your job. AI is just going to take the job of those who don't want to improve on their skills and those who don't want to incorporate also AI into their toolbox and get better on it. So there's so many school of thoughts, and even when Sam Altman released this book recently where it was saying that 95% of marketers, AI would take the job of 95% of marketers, it got people more scared because people were like, am I part of those 95% or am I part of the 5% instead? So yes, AI has been, I think it has been the biggest change in the last decade.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. And I saw that post from Sam Altman too, and Sarah Griesenbach, I think, either reposted it or commented on LinkedIn. She was like, how to offend an entire industry in one tweet. It was pretty interesting because, it definitely started a conversation.
Okay. So, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you have come across in your copywriting and brand strategist career? What has made you open your mouth and be like,
I think one of the biggest misconceptions from brands, and what I hear when I talk to a lot of content managers and content marketers that I work with at brands, and they hear a lot from their bosses, from the CMO or generally the CEO, that brand is kind of squishy and fluffy and not important, as important as other marketing activities. And I understand that because they're looking for, it's not easy to quantify the impact of having a great brand. But it's actually, I think that's a big mistake and a big misconception, because messaging and your brand is kind of everything. And if it's a little bit off or a little bit fuzzy, then that can kind of have like a trickle down effect through the whole organization. So, brand is not just about what marketing is saying, but it comes through in your sales calls. It comes through when HR is trying to recruit candidates to work for you. And if things are just a little bit off, then everybody on the team kind of slowly gets 1 degree off, 1 degree off, 1 degree off. And soon, the brand can kind of be changed or take on a different meaning. Whether that's through the packaging or different platforms that you're on, you want to try and tell a consistent story.
There are three different things marketing professionals, especially freelancers, worry about the most. The first thing is how to set your rates and when to increase them. The second thing is writing the perfect first drafts, especially the introduction and conclusion aspect. It's like you can probably spend 5 hours writing the body of the content, but that introduction aspect, can take about an hour just to write 3 sentences or 1 paragraph. So that is the second worry of most marketing professionals and most freelancers. The third worry is how to get the next client to work with. So let's take them one after the other, and hopefully we can make it less spooky. For the first question, or for the first worry, how do you set your rates, and when is the right time to increase your rates?
Okay, great question and great research here.
Thank you.
I set my rates based on flat rate, like a per piece or per project.
Okay.
A lot of freelancers tend to start with like per word or per hour. A lot of agencies ask for that, and that can be useful at times. But I think per project allows you to really calculate in your head how much time or how much income's worth you need from it, and then be able to set a value-based price based on what the value is for the client.
Okay.
So that you're not necessarily trading directly time for money.
Yeah.
And that allows you a little bit of leeway. And as far as when to raise your rates, I generally do it once a year or twice a year.
Okay.
Usually around the new year is a good time to do it, just because it's kind of, is a time of new beginnings and changes anyway. But there's not necessarily a bad time to do it. Some people do it in the summer. Some people do it right after tax time. But I definitely would, one benchmark people give is if everybody's saying yes to your rates and they're saying yes right away. And if you have more inquiries than you can handle, then that's another good sign that you should be raising your rate. Yeah, it's a good sign.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. For the second worry, how do you write the perfect introduction and conclusion? And what do you look out for when editing your drafts?
Okay, this is a great question because, introductions can be tough.
Definitely.
I generally write the introduction last.
Yeah.
I write the introduction last because at that point you really know what the article is really, really about and what all the angles are that you're taking. So it's better, it's easier to encapsulate it then. But in general, the introduction should kind of give the reader a preview. It should hook them.
Yeah, I feel like introductions are like a resume summary.
Yeah, kind of like a resume summary, except I would write it in a more engaging way because what a lot of people tend to do with introductions is make like a sweeping generalization. Like you want to stay away from the whole like in today's ever-changing digital landscape, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So instead of that, I try to use like a story.
Immediately I see something like that, I skip.
Yes,
I skip.
it's a skip. And if I'm looking at, another writer's, that's a sign that I'm like, no, we got to change this. So something that really puts the reader in the story right away, just puts them right in the middle of it, like an imagine this scenario, or what if has this ever happened to you, something like that. Yeah. And the conclusion is kind of a summary.
Yeah. I like to paint a story when I'm writing the introduction aspect because I feel that is what explains the idea. Imagine that you're doing this and something like this happens. More or less like combining the problem, making the problem realistic, something that they can think about, something that they can see, and then try to tie that out to part of the solution that I can give a one-line solution in the introduction and encourage them to continue reading to see the other parts, the other solutions in the body of the content.
Yeah, you can totally do that in B2B too. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we are through with 2 worries now.
Okay.
Based on your experience in freelance so far and the brands you have worked with, what client acquisition method mostly needed the most for you?
Oh, I think for me, it has been mostly referrals and networking. Yeah.
Okay. I looked back at the different people I've interviewed yesterday. I made a post on Twitter and I looked back at the different people. I have a spreadsheet where I collated different data that I've collected over the past 10 episodes and the name, the referral methods that worked for them, the acquisition method that worked for them, what tools they use, how much they earn, all of those kind of things. And I realized that referrals is at the top. it is the most effective client acquisition method, which is very strange because on social media, everyone is touting personal brand as the most effective method. People tell you, build a personal brand on social media, post helpful content every day, clients will come to you, be a client magnet. But personal branding came in, I think, third. Personal branding came in third, referral came in first, warm outreach came in second, and cold emailing came in last. And that data was very insightful. And it's the same thing you're talking about right now on how referral is the most effective client acquisition method for you. So how does that work?
So for starters, you have to be awesome to work with and produce great work.
Definitely.
Produce work that gets results for them, be easy to work with, be flexible, be a great communicator. So that's number one. Personal brand can play into that. And that's part of the second part is that you make sure that you keep building that relationship with them while you're working together, but also if they move on to another company or whether you end the project, make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn. Ask them if it's okay to get their email address so you can communicate at the next place that they work. And then, so that's where the personal brand plays in, is if they see you on LinkedIn or on Instagram or wherever you post, then that keeps you top of mind. That they'll remember, oh, Rebecca was great to work with. And I know that now that she's doing XYZ kinds of projects, she's doing brand strategy because I see her talking about it on LinkedIn. So that I might be kind of, the first person that they think of to recommend.
So they're more tied together.
Yeah, exactly. They are tied together. And I also have like a form that I send to people at the end of a project, that asks for feedback. How did you enjoy working with me? What could I have done better, etc. And just right in that form, I ask them then, hey, do you have anyone who you think would benefit from my services? And sometimes they have someone in mind. So yeah, it's as simple as that.
Okay, that's a very smart strategy.
Thank you.
All right, let's go back to the very beginning. When did you start making money from marketing? And since then, this is more personal than the previous questions because we're talking money. But when did you start making money from marketing? And since then, what is the least you have been paid and the most you have been paid as a copywriter and a brand strategist?
Oh, we're getting real now. Love it. So yeah, I will talk about as a freelancer, because when I was working in-house, there was obviously salary involved. And then when I decided to go freelance, I was kind of building up from zero. And probably the least I made was, a lot of people start out in copywriting working for those, they call them the content mills. They're like a site where they broker out the pieces for you. I think I maybe made $20 for some post on one of these content mill sites, just trying to get my name out there and get some samples under my belt. I think that's an okay way to start, but you should move out of there as soon as you can. And then the highest I've been paid so far, I think, was like a $12K a month retainer for brand strategy, consulting, SEO, and kind of like ongoing education and writing. So yeah, they had me on a retainer model, which is nice. Based on what you mentioned before, pitching can be really tough and cause burnout. So what a lot of writers do to combat that is work with people on a long-term basis.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. I'm always happy to talk about, for there to be more transparency around money and freelancing.
Yeah.
Not an easy topic.
It's not. When I was interviewing Ashley Cummins, it was one thing we talked about. The sad part about freelancing is that there is not much transparency in freelancing. Everyone is more or less trying to keep how much they earn. And the sad part is it only favors the company, the employers, because one, you don't know how much the next person is earning, so you don't know whether you're supposed to negotiate for a higher pay. The next person also does not know how much you're earning, so they don't know whether to negotiate again. And the only person at the end of the day that is benefiting from this is the employer. So hopefully more freelancers can, and that's what we're trying to do again with this podcast, hopefully more freelancers can be more transparent with their pay. So thank you for sharing once again.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, I agree. And there's more, I think there are more resources coming out, at least in the freelance world. I know Superpath is a community for freelancers that puts out an annual salary report. Copy Hackers has like a tool that helps you calculate how much to ask for based on your experience and results and et cetera, et cetera. But it's definitely a learning curve and there's no formula. So in the spirit of getting real,
If you could start over, what would you wish someone had told you when you started freelancing 7 years ago?
Oh, so many things.
Let's go. Let's go.
First, I wish they would have told me that you don't want to do it alone.
Yeah.
I think I knew that I didn't have to do it alone, but it's taken me a few years to realize that the community of peers and other freelancers, whether that's copywriters or designers or other entrepreneurs, is really what makes this fun and how you can really advance in your business by learning from each other online, but also in mentorships and mastermind and group programs. And even just like I've been to freelance co-working events online that make it just really a lot more fun and a lot more beneficial to run your business in this remote world. So I wish someone had emphasized that to me back in the day.
Okay. What tools do you use day to day that you can't live without? What tools help you be more productive?
Okay. I think I'm pretty simple when it comes to tools. I use FreshBooks for invoicing and accounting.
Okay.
I use a lot of Slack and email for communication. I use Google Docs and Google Sheets for turning in work and various aspects of my business, like on the back end organizational side. I use Zcal, which is a tool. It's kind of like a Calendly alternative for setting up meetings and it's really easy to embed into your website and accept a payment right at the same time as they book an appointment.
Oh, that's beautiful.
There's two other tools that some people may not have heard of that I like to use for, they're really helpful for like a website audit. If you want to show people what it might look like to edit text on their website, or also for gathering samples. There's one called Go Full Page.
Go Full Page,
yeah. It takes like a full page screenshot of a website or a long blog post. So even if it's really long, it like scrolls down the page for you and turns it into a really nice PDF.
That's nice.
And then for premium, you can annotate it. You can like add comments to it, circle a bit of text and say like, I would change this for this reason. So that's really helpful. And the other one is called Edit Anything. So it's a Chrome extension. And if you just install this Edit Anything extension, you can basically open up any website. Like I could open up the Slack website and like change all their text, and I could send it to the CEO of Slack and say, hey, I would suggest these improvements on your website, and this is exactly what it would look like. So it's just kind of a really
that's a very cool tool.
It's so cool, yeah. And I think that it's underutilized. So shout out to Edit Anything.
All right, I'm just finding out about it, and I will definitely check it out.
Yeah, do it.
So, prediction. Going by the AI wave currently, what 4 skills do you think marketers need over the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, good one. I actually think that the skills that we need are going to be, on a high level, they're going to be similar. It's going to be creativity is going to be huge, especially with the advent of AI. But I still think good old fashioned things like integrity, authenticity, and reliability are going to be huge. The
creativity will play a very huge part because of the regurgitated content of AI. And I think in line with that, it would also be the ability to interview subject matter experts, because AI can only create content from already created content. Whereas if you're able to interview subject matter experts, you're getting the data fresh. You're getting every information fresh right from the source. But hopefully more people can get better at that part.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that comes back to a really, really basic skill like communication and knowing what great questions to ask and knowing how to interpret a pause in their question, or, know how to pause to let them kind of tell the story. So yeah, that's going to be really important. And creativity could also be, putting in those SME quotes, but also being able to put in your human experience and that storytelling that we were talking about, like an example of a time that the problem at hand affected you, which a computer cannot make up.
So before this call, in our conversation on Slack, you talked about the, in quotes, witchy things that you do in your business that works for you, that helps you more or less stay in the groove. And I think this is one thing most marketers, especially freelancers, struggle with. The be getting burnt out or finding a balance between work and life. I think that's where the real issue is, because freelancers don't exactly have a set time. So if you don't have a balance, you somehow find yourself working 20 hours per day. So for you, what are the witchy things, in quotes, what are the witchy things that help you stay creative and also prevent burnout?
Yeah, the witchy things which depending on who you are and how you approach life, may be more or less witchy. But yeah, you're right about burnout and work-life balance. So I've found a few routines that help me just kind of set a nice tone for my day. And one of those, the first one is that I do every morning, I do like a 15 to 20 minute yoga practice. So it might just be like gentle stretching. It might be with a YouTube video, or it might just be on my own. But I just like to, I'm sitting a lot at work. And so I like to start the day with a little bit of movement. It actually started during the pandemic. Thank you, COVID. I started doing daily routines instead of where before I had been doing like, a class in the evening once or twice a week. And this little bit every day just really turned out to be much more beneficial for me. It like kind of helps me start from a place of non-stress. And then in the evening, I'll generally throw a short practice in the evening as well.
Okay.
So that's the first one.
Okay. What are the others?
Yeah, my other witchy things are, I have a pack of tarot cards, and I'm not really an experienced tarot reader, but I realized that I like to just take like one card.
Okay.
It could be at the beginning of like a busy week to just kind of like give me inspiration about what I can think about.
Okay.
Or if I'm having like a struggle and I'm kind of feeling burnt out, it'll often provide like inspiration of kind of just like a question I can focus on, or a mindset that I can try to kind of embody.
Okay.
So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is that I like to work with crystals near my desk.
Okay.
Actual like pieces of stone. So I keep a piece of amethyst near me because that can signify strength and confidence. And then I keep rose quartz to remind me to be gentle to myself and have self-love.
Yeah.
And then I keep citrine for financial success and money. Okay. Because citrine is supposed to attract abundance. So those are my witchy things. As a freelancer who's an expat, it can be really, I can overwork, as you said, if I'm not careful, because for me, my evening time is like when my clients are waking up.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of, give myself some ways to chill out and not stress when I'm checking emails at maybe 7 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I've also heard, I've not tried it though, but I've also heard that burning of incense can also help with calming the mind and helping you be more creative.
I can imagine that. I don't burn incense, but I know aromatherapy is really popular, so I don't see why not. Yeah, whatever works.
All right. So away from all of that, away from marketing, away from deep questions, what are some books that you think marketers should read but are not specifically for marketing?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say just read fiction.
Okay.
Because fiction reminds us to, it is great to read business books, but we're also focused on how can we always be better. Sometimes it's good to just let go. And with everything, what we were talking about with AI, I think it's good to, read a Stephen King book. He's a master at how to make you need to turn that page again, how to use really small details to make a character more realistic and to move the story forward. So I think, find an author, a fiction author that you love and dive in. Okay.
Now, down to the wine question. What's your favorite type of wine?
This is my favorite question. I've been waiting for this. I love a good French Bordeaux, I think. Like a nice, spicy, earthy. The French cannot do wine wrong.
All right. So if you could have a glass of wine with any marketing professional of your choice, who would it be and why?
There's so many.
Let me not restrict it to marketing professionals.
Yeah.
If you could have a glass of wine with anyone of your choice, who would it be and why?
I was going to say, I think I would just like to sit down with like a group of other marketers, other business owners, and like my peers, because I think I've learned so much from them along the way, like whether they're 2 steps ahead of me or 2 steps behind me, or we're kind of doing similar but adjacent things. I think that I would love to just be able to sit down and like pick their brain and, have like a group wine / coaching session where we all talk about what's working for you, what's not working for you, what's the craziest client story you've ever had. I think that sounds like a good time to me. Yeah.
Okay. I found out that your Twitter page is inactive. I don't want to say gone, but you have not been on Twitter for a long time.
No, I stopped.
Yeah.
I'm mostly active on LinkedIn. So I realized, Twitter's fine, I think, but I realized that my B2B clients are more likely to look for a professional.
On
LinkedIn. So I'm not active on.
Okay.
I should probably put a post that says hey, I'm not monitoring this. Come over to find me on LinkedIn, but I haven't done that yet.
What is your name on LinkedIn so that people can find you?
Yeah. So, I believe my profile, it's LinkedIn -in, and then it's Rebecca Susan Rosenberg on the actual URL.
Okay.
But you can just search for me as Rebecca Rosenberg with a BERG. And I'm the only one who is located in Turkey at the moment, so I should be pretty easy to find.
All right, then. Is there anywhere else? Your website?
Yeah, my website is RebeccaRosenberg.net. You can find me there. I also have a twice monthly newsletter that I publish called Content Wave, where I share tips about content marketing and about freelancing.
Okay.
I also have a freebie right now that's a checklist for what to include on a brand messaging guide. So if you know that you need guidelines for your client or for your brand, this is kind of a way to help you get started and figure out what needs to go in there. You can find that on my website as well. Okay,
so we have come to the end of the episode, and it's been such a fun conversation. I've enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you. You're a great interviewer.
Thank you. So thank you for coming on the pod.
Yeah, thank you, Olaniyi.
Have a lovely day ahead. Bye for now.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Marketing Over Wine. To listen to more career stories of marketing professionals around the world, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or any podcast app of your choice. Or simply visit marketingoverwine.com to stay up to date.